I'm going to trust my intuition with this choice. But I think when we're thinking of intuition, we're not understanding that it is based on you making a prediction, then that prediction coming true or not, and then you figuring out, okay, was I accurate?
This is the thing, though. What if my intuition is saying we should take the little basket and her intuition is saying we should take the cart? Whose intuition do we trust? The intuition you should trust is the one that's more calibrated. The one that's more calibrated is the one who's done more shopping.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1307. You need the permission to be imperfect. There is no such thing as perfect. Today, for episode number 1308, understanding your intuition. I used to think intuition was a very woo thing, a very, very, very spiritual thing. And I think it can be, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't mean any negativity towards that. But now I'm thinking more than ever that when people talk about their intuition and they say like, I'm going to go with my gut. You hear that often. I think that's what that means, right? I'm going to trust my intuition. I'm going to trust my intuition with this choice. But I think when we're thinking of intuition, we're not understanding that it is based on you making a prediction, then that prediction coming true or not, and then you figuring out, okay, was I accurate? And that really is my goal in this episode, to say, okay, when's the last time you made a prediction? Has that prediction, when it came true or not, did you sit with it and say, oh, wow, I was closer than I think, I'm further away than I think? We've had this conversation many times behind the scenes, Alan, where you and I will either meet somebody or we'll know someone, and I'll say, that relationship is just not going to last. It's just not going to last. And in the beginning, you always used to say, like, how do you know? And I was like, I don't know. It's just my intuition tells me that. In reality, there are certain things that I'm seeing that I've seen a pattern of in the past, that every time I said that, what I said actually ended up coming true. And it was like, interesting. These are the 5 things that I saw. Oh, okay. Now I can kind of connect those dots. So my goal in this episode is to make intuition more accessible to you, where it might seem like, I don't have intuition. I don't know what's going to happen. You probably know what's going to happen better than you realize, but you might not be predicting it because you don't have the belief to believe that you do. And here's the other thing. I think a lot of us hide from our intuition because oftentimes our intuition tries to take us out of a situation that would be best for us, but it kind of sucks in the moment. A relationship, right? I know this relationship isn't going to work, but yeah, whatever. I'm just going to put that. Let me keep pushing that thought down.
Well, I think our intuition often guides us outside of our comfort zone. So, of course, remember you and I were in the car, we were headed towards a venue, we were co-hosting an event called Top Notch Live, and we were talking about the whisper and how eventually the whisper becomes a scream.
Yes.
If you don't deal with it, you can only push the whisper down so long, aka when your intuition's trying to tell you something, before eventually it's like, yo, make a change. And I think that's what intuition is as well. I remember I was going to the supermarket. There's a place called Hannaford right next to Emilia and I's gym. And when we were heading in, and in the beginning of Emilia and I's relationship, I didn't trust her intuition enough. I didn't mean not to. It's just I didn't know that she could predict the future as well as she could, aka predict outcomes in advance. Okay? So she's like, we should take a bigger cart. And I'm like, no, we're only going to grab a few items. So I grabbed the little basket. No. Every single time, we should have taken the bigger cart. We end up getting a bunch of stuff. And so that's just a simple example. And she'll say, can you just trust me a little more next time? Absolutely. This is the thing, though. What if my intuition is saying we should take the little basket and her intuition is saying we should take the cart? Whose intuition do we trust? The intuition you should trust is the one that's more calibrated. The one that's more calibrated is the one who's done more shopping. And it's very hard in the moment. It was late night. We aren't going to have a heated discussion about which cart we should take. But the point is that you got to kind of know whose genius zone, who should be the guide in this arena. So Kev, for example, you're a podcast coach. If you are guiding me in podcasting and I'm a new podcaster and I'm 5, 10, 15 episodes in, obviously, I should trust your intuition over mine, but I have to take what you say filter it through my own goals, my own beliefs, my own values, my own intuition, and then figure out what's right for me. So no, I shouldn't just blindly do what Kevin says, but I should definitely trust that he knows how to predict outcomes more than I do in this arena. And so the other piece I wanted to share here about intuition that I think a lot of people don't understand, and I didn't understand this for so many years, I think there's two types. And this I can't pretend to have figured out yet, but I'm contemplating it constantly. The intuition that Kevin is referring to, I believe, is, we're reading a book by Dr. Caroline Leaf called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. In this book, it's very deep neuroscience. It's honestly like hard to read. It's not an enjoyable book in my opinion. It's very valuable, but not enjoyable because it's so deep in the neuroscience. There's the unconscious mind, there's the subconscious mind, and then there's the conscious mind. The conscious mind is the part that can predict outcomes in the future and project. The thing that's interesting is that what learning is, and this is kind of from the book, but also my own understanding. When you go and do things, so let's say you're a podcaster. You do a bunch of podcasts, and every single time you say and you, say this one story, you know that it's not going to land. Now you know and you've learned from that, whereas someone at the beginning might not even notice it. How do I make this land? Give me a second. Okay. Your subconscious mind is 40,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. I think of it like a 4K TV. There's 4,000 pixels on this TV. Here's the thing, though. The subconscious mind represents 3,999 of those pixels. The conscious mind only represents 1 pixel on the screen. Here's the problem, Kev. That 1 pixel actually commands the rest of the pixels. When that 1 pixel, the conscious mind, sets a goal, now all of a sudden the subconscious and unconscious minds start working to achieve the goal. So what intuition I think is, hey, Kev, you set a goal to get 40 NLPS clients. You have to message this person today. You don't know why, but you got to assume that it's in alignment with that goal. Because your unconscious mind is working when you're sleeping, it's working when you're awake, it's working on helping you achieve your goals. But if reaching out to that person is outside your comfort zone or you're afraid of sales, now you're not going to reach out. And then you're not going to get your goal, you're not going to know why, and then you're going to stop believing in yourself. When in reality, your intuition was ready to help you, but you didn't get outside your comfort zone. You let fear win.
It's interesting because I remember before I ever started this podcast, I was probably like, I don't know, maybe 26. I think I started the podcast like later. I don't remember how old I was when I started the podcast, but this was before I had the podcast. I remember I would get messages from people back on Snapchat about their relationships. I used to get relationship messages all the time. And I never knew how to answer them. I hadn't studied relationships, but I always felt like, yeah, this is what I would do. I remember there was this young lady who reached out. She had a boyfriend, and she would message me and say stuff like, well, he says this, and there was just like so many things, and it was like, no, that's not going to work. Not going to work. And here's a list of reasons why. It's just not going to work unless something changes dramatically. But I don't know how I knew that. It was just like the right answer would just...
That's an unconscious competency based on patterns that you've recognized throughout your life that have been downloaded into your unconscious mind. And then your unconscious and subconscious mind picks up data from your senses and realizes, nope. It draws a conclusion. That's what intuition is. It's a conclusion drawn in advance based on a future outcome that may or may not happen. So, for example, Next Level Live, you'll say things like, they're not going to email me back. The venue, I don't know, we're not going to get an email back. You'll say things like that because you kind of know. And I think that, and we've all had the experience where tying our shoe was really hard at the beginning. And now it's unconscious. It's easy. You just do it. that you were unconsciously competent, but you didn't know why, and you didn't really know it because you don't have a degree or whatever. And that's what I think is what we refer to when we call a genius zone. It means something that you're unconsciously competent at. You don't even know how good you are because you've always been so good. It's this weird thing. It's not until you and I get on the microphone, and you do this all the time because you go on other podcasts, but like I remember going on podcasts that of people that were early on, and good for them for doing it. But I remember thinking like, oh, this is going to be hard for me not to run this show, because you kind of just have to sit there because they're really fumbling and struggling because we're unconsciously competent at something. If you're out there listening or watching this, think about how hard this must be. We make it look easy, but it's not. In the beginning, it was so hard to articulate a thought. It was so hard to not interrupt Kevin. It was so hard for me not to say between every single word. A long pause like that right there would have been so difficult for me in the beginning. We're very unconsciously competent, but it's because we've honed that craft for 6 years now. And now we don't even know how we're good we are or how we got so good. And we kind of have to think about like, well, we had an jar at one point and we review the podcast and Kevin's, kind of called out some stuff that wasn't very good and vice versa. But it's very hard to know where your intuition's at in a given arena, who to trust. And I think people struggle to trust their own intuition because of two reasons. One, it's going to bring you outside your comfort zone because it knows that's probably what's best for you. Or two, maybe you trusted your intuition in an arena that it was actually fear disguised as intuition. That I do think is a thing too. It's like, you used to say, I don't like going to the bar. Your story you told yourself was, I don't like being drunk. I don't like being around people. I don't like the bar. The truth was you're afraid to be seen as short in that setting, and that's not where you're valued. And maybe those other things are true too, but the real reason you're not going, okay, not true.
Most of that, I don't like being drunk thing. It's like I like to get a little buzzed every once in a while. I like to get a little loopy maybe once in a while. Right. But I don't like social settings with a large amount of people. I think that's true for me.
Do you think? Okay, so what's a good example? I think the other thing that I'll share briefly is pull. What do you feel pulled to? What do you feel called to? Are you answering the call? It sounds, to your original point, it sounds woo, but I remember one time I was coaching Bianca and mentoring her completely free. And I remember you said, and I'll never forget this, you said this very kindly, but you were like, why? I don't understand. Like, we have a business to run. Why are you coaching people for free still? And I remember I said, I don't know why I'm called to help her. I'm supposed to help her. I don't know how to explain it. I have to do this. And it was interesting. I didn't even know why, really. She ended up being the one who introduced me to Emilia because Emilia saw my Instagram fitness model stuff and was like, nope. And then Bianca said, no, his mind is it's not his body, it's his mind. And she listened to the podcast, and that's how we connected. So if it wasn't for Bianca, I would never have met the love of my life. So I don't know, is that coincidence or is that my calling? And I think intuition is guiding us all the time. I just think sometimes it's fear disguising itself as intuition, and other times it's intuition guiding us and we're just outside our comfort zone and we're scared. And I use this analogy. Are you afraid you won't hit the ball at the plate? Baseball analogy. Are you afraid you're not going to hit the ball? You're afraid you're going to strike out? Or are you not even sure you want to swing? If you're not even sure you want to swing, that probably means it's not aligned. If you're afraid you won't hit the ball and you're afraid to strike out, you probably should at least try.
I absolutely love book club. It is my favorite way to start the weekend. We talk about the chapter that we read previously, and it made a big difference in my life and the beginning of my journey of self-development. And it is a very kind and welcoming community, and it's a great space where if you want to just sit and listen, you're able to, but there's also a lot of space for discussion and questions. I have nothing but good things to say about book club. Yeah,
it's hard, right? Because I don't know. I was thinking of this. When when we had Next Level Live, the team came and I found us a really nice Airbnb on a lake that was like 20 minutes from the venue, but it only had parking for 4. And I remember thinking, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. And then I was very, very, but again, that could just be me being fearful of it. But like, I knew.
It's an unconscious competency though, because you used to be the logistics guy.
Is that intuition or is that just experience?
I think it's intuition, built on experience. It's well calibrated intuition based on experience.
Your travel intuition is way different than mine.
It's not strong. It's not
but
strong.
There's other things where your intuition is way more honed than mine. So that's,
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting. I knew this would be an interesting episode. This might be one that we leave with more questions than we came with, but I want you to have that thought of, where am I making predictions and how accurate am I? I'm almost always accurate about travel predictions. Almost always. Very rarely am I ever not.
Remember at the Airbnb when you and I, it was late night before Next Level Live and the whole team's there and we finished up the whole logistics of the event, or the content, not logistics, content. And you were like, all right, we got to get up at 3:45.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you're like, if we don't get up at 3:45, there's no way. Because I want to get up at 4. You're like, there's no way we get to the venue by 5 if we don't wake up at 3:45. Because you're going to shower, I'm going to shower, right? And who was it that said, yeah, but wouldn't you rather get more sleep? And I literally said this. I think it was Amy L. I said, Amy L., he's never been wrong. He's never been wrong when he makes a prediction about travel, planes, anything. So I'm just going to trust him. I'm getting up at 3:45. And dude, we got to the venue at 5:38. We got there late because it ended up being
5:15.
5:15? Oh, okay, fair.
Yeah,
it was foggy though.
Yeah.
It was super foggy. You didn't predict the fog, but you did predict that we were jeffed if we got up at 4. If we got up at 4, we wouldn't have gotten there till 5:30.
Yeah.
And we were already behind on setting up. So I trust you. That's the thing. You need to know where your intuition is calibrated and where it's not. You got to trust Steven Spielberg with the camera more than me. You got to.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing is like, I'll have those. I've tried to say this with clients before. And I always preface with like, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I know way more than just podcasting. But I don't know how I know. I just know because I've done so many different things. Like I can probably help you set up your camera. Will it ever be as good as Alessandro? Absolutely not.
Nope.
But there are things I know. It's like, that's not going to work. I can help you set up your tech, your microphone and all that. Am I as good as somebody who's like an AV professional? No, probably not. But there's things I know that I don't know how I know. It's probably the same for you. This is just a weird example, but if you've ever babysat, you probably know way more about situational awareness with children than I do because you have reps and you have unconscious experience that you don't understand. So yeah, it's very interesting. This is an interesting episode.
I remember I asked you, Kev, when I got Tariel, I said, what do I got to look out for as a cat dad? And you said, okay, expect them to want love sometimes, and other times want nothing to do with you.
Yeah, that's fair.
Valid. You didn't tell me they can open doors until recently.
Not all of them can.
Not all of them can. Tariel can, turns out. But that's why I ask. Because I know I don't know. I have a harder time on the other end where I know. I know that I know, and I know when I have higher awareness. And I think I have trouble trusting that and leaning into that with other people because I think other people are insecure about their own lack of awareness, honestly. And it makes sense. I mean, yeah. I
have that. How many times have I said like, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel. I say that all the time. You always say, Kev, just trust that. It's like,
you got to.
This is interesting. We've had an interesting week at Next Level University, but we had a moment where we were talking about one of the departments and we were like, honestly, we got an email from a client and I said to you, I was like, Alan, I knew that wasn't going to work. I knew, and it's never going to. I don't know how to explain it. And you're like, well, try. Like, what is it?
Here's the problem, because if you can't explain it,
I know.
How do I just trust that you know?
I think that's
which
intuition.
Eventually you did explain it though.
Yeah.
And then we can to the department because it makes sense. But
it's almost like in the beginning, I can't tell you why I don't think it's going to work until it actually aligns. And it's like, oh yeah, I expected that. I just
I
didn't
know.
know that's what I expected at the time because I couldn't connect the dots yet.
I hope that people, how much can you trust yourself is the question that I asked. And here's the thing. If you've never rock climbed before, don't go without a rope. But you can't trust yourself that much yet, you know? But if you've done, you know, a lot of rock climbing for decades, you can trust that you can do it without a rope or whatever. I still wouldn't, but
Same.
that's kind of the thing here is it's very difficult to know when you can trust your intuition and when you can't. That's why this is so difficult. Everyone's like, oh, just trust your gut. Honestly, not a good idea in certain cases.
For sure.
If I just trusted my gut on episode titles, it would be the 5 fundamentals of natural fitness physique. Like, no one cares, Alan, right? You can't just trust your gut on everything, but you have to answer your own calls and then figure out and fumble along the way. And I think that's one of the reasons I like failing forward, because what if that failure is bringing you to the lesson that you needed in order to get to the thing you always wanted? And so it's very difficult to know. And if you've ever seen the movie Interstellar, have you seen it?
I've not.
Interstellar? Okay. In that movie, spoiler alert, there's a situation where Matthew McConaughey's future self is signaling to his current self that you have to go on this journey. And I think that's what intuition really is on a deep spiritual level. But then along the way, there's also the brain intuition of, hey, like that chess move isn't going to work. Or that chess move's the one. You got to move the horse to over there and you got to take the queen or whatever. Even though you don't really know why yet. You know? And I think that hopefully everyone can trust their intuition more optimally moving forward based on the circumstance. I trust Emilia's intuition and your intuition way more than mine in certain arenas, but there's other things where I have to be like, no, like we got to trust me more. And then usually it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. If you've ever found yourself saying it's hard to explain, but, or I don't know how to explain it, but that's probably a good example of this, unless it's just something you don't understand yet. But yeah, I don't know if you ever fully understand your intuition. Really?
I don't.
I don't. I mean, there's certain things where I feel very, very confident, but it's like, I don't. The other, and we'll head off after this because I know this is getting deep, but the other thing is you don't know the paradox of not knowing what would have happened if you went the other way.
I know.
That's a whole nother conversation, but
and then the confirmation bias of, see, I told you that wouldn't work. It's like, well,
right.
Or I told you that relationship wouldn't work. It's like, well, what if it did? Right. And then there's the other side of that, which is like, what if it does work and you thought it wouldn't? And then it's like, well, was I wrong? But then they break up later or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's the timing on being able to calibrate your intuition is very. So for example, Kevin and I bring this to earth, make a business decision yesterday. Okay. That we won't know whether or not it was the right choice until 10 years from now. And then we're going to somehow connect it back to that choice and say, see, I told you, Kev. Remember when I said it's very difficult to, this whole thing is really difficult. Yeah, I would say, yeah, we left you with more questions than answers.
I kind of, again, my intuition told me doing this episode was going to be a challenge for us. Because this is something I don't know. I can't claim to have this figured out. I don't know if anybody really has this figured out. I'm sure there's people who have it figured out more than I do. But I think anytime we can bring up something that we are dealing with or we're learning about or experiencing, I always think that's valuable. Always.
I think you got to go with what you think you know. I think you can trust your intuition more. Particularly in things that you deep down do know that you know. And I think that you either trust your intuition too much when you shouldn't, or you probably trust your intuition too little when you should, and figure out which end you're on and try to get to the center, I suppose.
I would concur. Next Level Nation, if you are looking for a community of like-minded individuals who are focused on growth, they're focused on character, they're focused on being more productive, better habits, happier, more fulfilled, whatever it may be, please join our private Facebook group, Next Level Nation. Link is in the show notes.
Also, as you know, Group 10 just filled. Huge shout out to anyone in Group 10 who is listening. Group 10, which they chose their name today. Powerhouse.
Yes.
True? Powerhouse.
Yes.
So Group 10 is officially Powerhouse. Group 11 is now open for admission, technically. There's a lot of people who didn't get into Group 10 who do want to join Group 11. The landing page should be done by the time this episode is done. So click the link in the show notes, go to the landing page, check it out, lock your spot now for Group 11 to make sure you get in it. That will be starting, I believe, I could be wrong about this. It's either June 11th or July 11th. I think it's July 11th. Yes, because we moved it out a week because we didn't want it on July 4th. Yeah. So July 11th, 2023, Group 11 will be launching. Join us, please.
Next Level Nation tomorrow for episode number 1309, the number one cause of drama in your life. Alan Lazarus. That's the number one cause of drama in my life. No, not really. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Trust your intuition, maybe. Next Level Nation.